Hello, everyone, and welcome to Garwar's Guide on Saturdays. Today's topic we'll be going over is formation strategy. So, Garwar's Guide to Formation Strategy. Yay! Look at that! Look at that title! Hey! We have some new overlays. I'm super excited about them, specifically for this show. Good morning, Star Chaser. Throat's fine. Yeah, just lots of talking. That always gets you. All right, so we're going to dive right in. For those of you who haven't been to this specific Saturday show before, it's a little different than my Friday shows. I am going to dive specifically into one topic and talk for about an hour directly on that. If you have questions that come up while I'm going over things, throw them in the chat with question colon before the question, and our friendly moderator Jay on the CNE Games chat will pick those out and throw them into a document for me, and I will get to all those at the end of the show. So after the first hour, we'll go into a Q&A session, specifically its own section, and I will address everything that has to do with today's topic first. So anything about formation strategy, I'll go through and I'll pick all those out, and then time permitting, I will try to get to any other questions you might have. So there you go, and away we go. Real quick, what you're seeing on my screen right now is a Mad Wizard gem farming formation. People are always curious what people use to farm gems. I'll talk about this more later, and we'll go into we're gonna delete this. It's gonna do its thing in the background, and we're gonna go into building out some formations and showing what the different formations look like in different places. So don't get too involved on this. This is very specific use case scenario. Also, something that we've never had before. We do have a code down there that's a free chest code. You can see it down at the bottom. We always have one of those. However, today we have a hidden code. I'm excited. I hope you're excited too. And away we go. So, welcome to Garwar's Guide to Formation Strategy. If you haven't figured out yet, I'm Garwar. Lots of people, when you first start the game, come in. You're thrown into the tutorial with our friend Tutorial Dwarf, aka Brunor, and the tutorial doesn't necessarily talk about formations too much. It does have you move people around every now and then because of how abilities work, and that's kind of their method of teaching you, hey, this is how to build a tutorial. But we're going to go into a much more in-depth version today. But to start to do that, we have to go, well, what the heck is a formation in the first place? And already with that question, we get a little confusing because people use the term formation in our community to mean two different things that are related. So at least that's helpful. One, and the most common use is people will go, well, what is your formation? And when they say that, they're talking about what is the organization of the, as they run off the field, what is the organization of the champions on your screen, right? So this that we see here momentarily is a formation. I'm going to turn off auto progress with champions loaded into it. But it is important to note that the general formation is also the shape that is seen on the screen. So this specific shape looks like this. So when you pull this up and you see the game tells you formation, this is kind of the first and most basic formation that the game refers to. So we're going to see that there are multiple columns where you can place champions. There's also multiple rows up and down, and there are multiple slots in each of these columns and or rows, depending on how you want to reference it. The game tends to just reference columns. They don't necessarily reference rows. So columns are what you're going to talk about. We're going to get in depth into all of this, but this is the general formation when people are talking about a formation. This is a campaign formation, specifically. So this is the formation you use throughout the Sword Coast campaign. And then this is a formation that you would use that is full of champions. When we all started, we probably should have been a little better about, as a community, about finding terms for things. But this is what it is. This is your champion formation, and this is the campaign formation. I guess that's the best we're gonna get. So when people are talking about getting help with a formation, it's always best to know where is it that you're at, so you can see what the layout of the formation is here, like this. But then also to help them place champions and figure out what's going on. A little confusing, but generally speaking, you can usually tell from the context that you're having a conversation with someone with what they're asking about. So why do we even have these different formation layouts like this in different campaigns and in different events and whatnot? And basically, it's there to enforce the idea that this is a formation strategy / management game, as well as being an idle / clicker type game. But the big thing here is you're solving puzzles. That's kind of the core of the game. Is one of the first things you have to do is figure out how to make one of these formations, how to place all of these champions that you get from all of these different things, in a way that is going to get you progress and allow you to complete adventures and variants and unlock things. This is kind of one of the core kind of puzzle strategy features of the game. So they give us different layouts to kind of challenge our ability to, place things in ways that are actually efficient and useful. And every time, every champion is unique in terms of how they're going to be used and what they offer, and thus offers just a little different kind of a puzzle piece when placed in any, even this basic formation that we're all so familiar with after years and years of playing, for those of us who've been here forever, can create different, an outrageous amount of different actual formations with champions in them based off who we want to use as a tank, who we want to use as our DPS, which supports we want to use, or in this case, what is the focus of this run? Right? This run is specifically about farming as many gems as possible, so I'm going to be using champions that might be a little unusual in most cases. Maybe these aren't champions that would get a lot of use outside of this. Like, they're, depending on what you're trying to do, your formation is going to change. That's kind of the key of formations in Idle Champions. So I'm going off of a bullet point list. Normally we talk about, like, well, how do you access this feature? Well, this feature is just, formations are in every campaign, as we've seen. So if we hop out to the campaign map, you'll see Sword Coast. Every Sword Coast campaign is going to use that same formation. Anywhere you click in the Sword Coast, we're going to see this same formation of 9 champions, 5 columns, front to back. However, if we hop over into, say, Tomb of Annihilation, it's going to have a completely different formation. So each campaign is going to have its own formation, but also, as we have an event running right now, this is super useful. Not just each event, as you'll see, but each champion for their specific event has a different formation offered. So that means we have currently 52, if my math is holding up, event champions as of recording this, which means there are, just for events, there are 52 unique formations available for you to attempt to build different setups with and push differently with. We also have currently 4 campaigns. However, coming very soon, next month, again, as the time of recording this, we will have a 5th in Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden. So as they add more campaigns, they're adding different formations for us. Like, here's the Baldur's Gate one, and Waterdeep Dragon Heist has its own. So every time we get one, we're going to see a new unique formation, and every time they add a new champion to the game, as with Torgar, we're going to see a unique event formation for as long as they can create them. There's probably a finite number. Well, there is a finite number because that's how math works, but who knows what that number is. I have not done that math for the way they build these. It's probably going to take a while to max them out. So, the big question we get, and what we're going to dive into now, is why should I build my own formation? Why should I even bother learning that? Why not just copy what somebody else uses? I mean, if they're using it effectively, why can't I use it effectively? And this gets into one of the other kind of foundational elements of the game, and that's the unique differences between accounts that come up based off gear. Gear is a major form of progress in the game and a major differentiator between different people's accounts. So, for instance, I have some fully epicked out champions with gilded slots and decent stats. And if I were to look at, say, my Bruenor, who's fully gilded, and if I look at his item numbers, all of a sudden item numbers are like over 1,000, and I can't necessarily just give you a formation that works for me and have you do this as well with it, because I have a lot more power in each of my champions than you might, and some of my champions are more powerful than others, and so you might have champions that are more powerful than mine in certain cases. Who knows? You're also going to have lots of differences between accounts based off how many blessings they have. These add power in very specific ways in each of these campaigns and then globally. And you also get power from perks, from patrons, right? And these can give you very specific things, like here's one that just increases damage of neutral champions. And here's one that increases healing by tank champions. Like, there's going to be a lot of very specific things that accounts might have that others don't. So the only time an account is roughly equal is when it's brand new. You're at your most equal with any other brand new player. And then when you get to end game and you've got all the blessings, all the perks, you're fully epic. At that point, your item levels may change and some of your guilds may change, but you're really close at that point, and you can share a formation, and this is what we see happen a lot. And that person who is experienced can look at that formation, load it in, try it, but then still make their own adjustments. So it's really important to learn how to build your own, because your account is basically unique for the most part. You can use other people's formations when they show them to you as a starting point, but you really want to then be able to learn how to tweak things here and there, try out different champions and whatnot to really kind of maximize your effectiveness. You can't just rely on other people's formations and hope to actually do super well. So ultimately we get into the question of how do I build my own formation, and that's where we're going to actually go ahead and complete this and hop into a new adventure. Probably should have let me turn my automation and stuff off real quick, because I don't want it loading in a new formation right away. Oh, and also, as we just saw flash across the screen there, your Modron pipes can also change your power and effectiveness as well a little bit. So there's lots of ways to change things up. So we're going to hop into just the very first type of adventure you usually hop into after the tutorial, and that's the Cursed Farmer. Normally we start with Tutorial Dwarf, though. So let's do that. So when you originally start the game, this is basically what you're seeing. You're given a set of core champions, which we're gonna highlight here for the purposes of this demonstration, just to start, and we'll get into specifically how things change with as you get other champions in a bit. But we'll load up kind of the core. Oh, nope. What am I doing? Jamila is the core champion there. All right. So this is the core that you start off with. So right away, what you kind of need to learn, and what is the kind of foundation of building a formation, is what does each champion do? What role do they fill in this scenario? The game kind of flips you on your head a little bit, because it starts you off with a support champion. If we look over here at role, within Bruenor. Bruenor is not a tank, and yet he is the only champion that you get when you start the game. So a little confusing, because, you know, at some point these enemies might run into you and start beating on you, and he's not going to survive very long. But you need to understand that Bruenor is a support, which means he is there to help out his other champions we have the main roles that we're going to be looking at for the moment are tank, support, and DPS. That's really kind of your core trinity for the game. You need to have usually at least one tank. You're going to need, generally speaking, at least one DPS, and then you're going to want a lot of people supporting that tank and that DPS. So we're going to add in the second champion, Celeste. Celeste here is healing support, so she is specific in what she offers in terms of support. She is going to support you in terms of buffs for power, but she's also going to provide some heals. And then when you get to the point where you get Nayeli in, I'm just kind of arranging them real quick here. Nayeli is taking support, so Nayeli is your first tank when you start. So with this, we have 3 champions, we have 2 support and a tank, and sometimes that's enough. When you start the game, that's going to be totally fine. The key here is how you place them, right? So if we end up with something like this, just because you weren't exactly sure how everything ended, you're going to have enemies running into your support and not into your tank. And why does that matter? Each champion starts off with different amounts of health. Bruenor is pretty healthy. He starts off with 500, but Nayeli, well, I have a lot of gear on these. Excuse me. Bruenor starts off with a decent chunk, but Nayeli actually can have a ton because she has items that can support her health. I probably should have shown this on my newer account, but even that one has gear, so it doesn't matter. But the idea here is that every role is going to have a different kind of health scaling. So putting a squishy support, or even worse, a squishy DPS up front, kind of a bad idea in most cases. I'm gonna throw some levels in here, and I'm not really gonna. I know I should probably talk about specializations, but we're gonna get that's getting into kind of more advanced stuff. We'll talk about that. But first off, as you upgrade, you're gonna find out that each champion is gonna offer certain things to your party. Understanding what your champions offer is the key to building your formation. Nayeli has an Aura of Courage that increases the damage of champions in the column directly behind her, which is part of her taking stuff. I mean, this is what informs you of the decision to not put her behind people, but instead to have her in front of people, right? So when you're starting off, you want to keep things like that into mind. So Nayeli should always, if you're using her as your tank, or even just as a support, she needs to be ahead of people. That's good to know. She has an Aura of Protection that increases the damage of champions by each enemy attacking her, so this is a tank feature. There are a lot of tanks that have features like this. This is part of the way they ramp up their damage, the damage buffs for everyone else when they're taking hits. She also offers, obviously, some damage to all champs, so she's supporting in the sense that she's providing a raise in damage, and she, of course, has ways to increase her own damage. But here's the thing. That doesn't really matter. It matters early on. They add these in because it matters in the terms of what we're seeing now, where everyone jumping out is killing something. And that's keeping our screen clean and letting us move forward. But ultimately, your upgrades for self-damage on your tanks aren't really super that important. With Nayeli, for taking specifically, we chose her specialization at level 100 that increases her health, because, again, she's going to be the one taking all the damage, so we want her as healthy as possible. Now, Celeste, on the other hand, as a support, she's going to want specific placement based off her abilities too. So she increases the damage of champions next to her by a certain amount. So you have to keep that in mind when placing. So as you see, I've thrown her kind of up in the front, but it can be here, she could be here. In all of these positions, she's increasing Bruenor's damage. Only in this one is she increasing both of their damage. In this one, she's not increasing their damage at all, right? So you need to know when you're reading through a champion that these kind of instructions on how abilities work are how you determine their placement. Adjacency is a big one, and that's what this is when they're saying next to. This is referring to an adjacent champion. She has Mass Cure Wounds, which heals the champions in the column in front of her every second. So this usually is going to mean that right off the bat, she's going to want to be in the row, or in the column right behind the tank. if you want her healing the tank. If you'll notice now, Nayeli is getting 86 health per second. And then her specialization increased that amount of damage. She has another choice, which normally is what you would want to pick here, but I'm trying to demonstrate how you can get stuck in a kind of a bad choice. I just increased her effect. She has another specialization choice, and we're going to go look at it here. Her other specialization choice is Life Domain. So with Life Domain, she increases the range of her Cure Wounds by 1, which basically means she heals the columns, both columns ahead of her. Now, when you start off the game, you're not going to have one of those potions I just used, but this is kind of showing you don't want to just always just pick something at random. You want to read what this does and make a decision based off your formation layout. We actually want, in this scenario, to switch her over, but I'm not going to do that just yet, so she's going to remain unchosen. We're going to look at Bruenor, because we need to know how he works in this situation too, before we decide what we're doing with Celeste. So, Bruenor increases the damage of himself by each adjacent champion, which is super odd, because he's a support, not a DPS, but hey, we're going to go with that. And then he has a Rally, which increases the damage of champions in the same column as him. So, this means that he really wants someone right here where Celeste is, and what he's doing is focusing his damage buff on that person. And then he has a Battle Master. We chose that spec that increases his Rally. So what we know so far is we have Nayeli, who's going to buff this column. So if we put people back here, Nayeli isn't giving a damage bonus to anyone. Only on this situation, only Bruenor and Celeste are actually giving bonuses to each other. If we put it like this, no one's getting a bonus from anyone, like at all, from those abilities. So we know we want Bruenor. Nayeli wants you to buff right here, which these arrows show. She wants you to put people right behind her. Bruenor wants in the same column. So we know right now we want to focus our damage right here. And Celeste, as you see, wants adjacent. She gets all these little green arrows. So anyone that's around her will get a buff. This is where I'm going to throw this, because we're going to add in Jarlaxle. And we're going to move Jarlaxle without even looking. We're going to move him right up there. Jarlaxle is your DPS champion when you're starting off. So we know that we want to focus Bruenor onto Jarlaxle. We want Jarlaxle right behind Nayeli. And we want Celeste adjacent to Jarlaxle, which is what we get here. This is kind of your optimal starting formation when you have 4 champions out when you start the game. And in this case, now we know what we need to do with Celeste's specialization. She's going to be 2 columns back, so if we want her healing Nayeli to keep Nayeli alive, we need to choose Life Domain. So now we have a situation where we're getting the buffs from all champions focused onto our DPS. This is what you want to do in Idle Champions. This is how you build out your formations. You want to focus the buffs from all of the champions in your formations onto your primary DPS. So the champion, the DPS champion, or the champion you've chosen to do damage, this is kind of the core. There are some exceptions. There are exceptions to all the rules in this game with certain champions. Certain champions like to do things a little differently, but again, this is part of reading and understanding a champion. It's core to your foundation of formation building. So right now we have the most basic formation that you start the game with. As you level up, you'll see Jarlaxle. He doesn't care about anything except himself. He's going to increase Gold Find. He's going to increase his own damage. That's it. He exists to be his narcissistic self. He wants everything to be about him. So he is going to increase your damage as a DPS. Some DPS champions will have rules about placement or have abilities that need you to place them in certain adjacencies or whatnot to other champions. Jarlaxle is very straightforward. Makes a very easy learning curve for you when you start the game. And everyone else just kind of continues to buff up in regards to these other champions. in that same kind of way, right? So this is kind of the core functionality of building out your formation is you need to read as you go. You need to read as you upgrade. What do these named abilities do, right? These are the ones that matter. If they've got it, inspired, rally. These are the things that matter. Battle Master and his specialization choice. Everything else is just increasing damage or increasing buffs. You need to read those named abilities to understand how to place your champions. And don't worry if you place them wrong starting off. It's not a big deal. You get to adjust them over and over again. That's fine. You just need to know that every time you add a champion, like we're going to add in Calliope here. What is Calliope? Calliope is healing support. So hey, we get another healer supposedly, and support. So we know that Calliope is going to be someone that we are going to build and place in such a way that they help out Jarlaxle. So if we level Calliope up a bit, we can take a look at Calliope's abilities. And this is kind of, again, core to the foundation of building out formations. She's going to increase the damage of champions in the column in front of her. Well, that makes this super easy. I want her behind Jarlaxle. That's it. I know that now. Song of Protection, okay. Grants temporary hit points to damage champions within 2 slots of her. Okay, well. So that means we have a secondary ask from Calliope of, hey, put me within 2 slots of your tanks. Well, to be, whether we put her at the top or the bottom, to be within 2 of the tank, that works. So we're solid here. We're buffing Jarlaxle, and we're protecting Nayeli if anyone gets close to Nayeli. Right? When she gets to her specialization, again, we want to read that. We can either increase the effect of her buff, or we can make it so that she shields faster. Early on, survival is important, so I'm going to pick that one. These are the decisions you make as you add champions, as you move forward. When you want to make swaps, you're going to look at these abilities. You need to understand those champions. This is why there are a lot of resources out in the community that have been made, like the guides I put out for all the champions. So you can read through every upgrade for a champion and all their abilities and be able to look at it and go, okay, I get an idea of how this champion's used. Now I know where I can swap them in and out in my formation, and you can use that to build formations. In-game, you do have, we do now have a nice little button down here that says Show Upcoming. This is fantastic for this. So if you click on it, what happens is when you get down here, you can see the next 4 or 5 roughly upgrades that they're going to get, which helps when you first click on a champion, because you're going to know right away before you put them in, like, what are they going to get. This is showing the first one. Lists off basically their level 10. So if we put a point into them, though, no. Shara would be the funky one. She does not like me at all. She wants me to pick something before I can see anything. Oh, Ashara, why you gotta be like that? Okay, there we go. See any? What's going on? So now we see the next 4, and we notice that there aren't any requirements for location and all of this. Even in this first one, there wasn't a requirement. It's just, it increases the damage of someone. So we can place her anywhere. I totally picked the wrong specialization for her, but that's fine. This is a scenario where if you have a swap, you can bring somebody else in. If you screwed something up. But starting off, you want to just kind of open up a champion, see what they are, DPS, support, see if they have requirements for placement, and then go from there. As it is, this is fine. I can still put her up here. We're just doing a demonstration. And this is what they build, or what they make these potions for. Potion of Specialization. These are just looted out of chests. So if you're building a formation and you make a mistake in the specialization, you can use one of these. Yes, I want to reset it. And then you look at this for Ashara specifically. She's going to buff something here. We're using Jarlaxle as our DPS, so we want dwarves and elves. Jarlaxle is a drow. Drow are dark elves. So that qualifies here. What it doesn't qualify is half elves. Half elves are not elves, and they're not anything else. They are mixed and have their own classification. So now we're better. Now we're actually all buffing Jarlaxle again. So we talked about some terms, and we're going to go through and we're kind of going to define them. We've got plenty of time for that. So we're kind of going to hit a bit of the frequently asked questions, because there usually at this point are questions about what are these terms you're throwing around. First up, what is a slot in a formation? Basically, the little round circle that you see here, everywhere I'm moving this is what is referred to as a slot in a formation. Not to be confused with a champion slot down here, like this is slot 1, this is slot 2, this is slot 3, slot 4, etc. But the formation slots are these little circles that you can place a champion in a formation. These are going to get referenced when they're talking about, like, oh, put it in the slot next to this, or the one behind that, or whatever. Not everyone uses that, but that's common terminology. How are slots counted in terms of distance from a champion? This is important. Some champions want you looking at things like this. So specifically Calliope, she grants her hit points to champions within 2 slots of her. So how exactly does that work? It's super easy in Sword Coast, because everything is connected. So her little arrows will show you that she is protecting everyone in this formation, because in this position she is within 2 slots of everyone, right? So you count 1, 2, you count it based off adjacent. So we're going directly across. It's going to hit here, it's going to hit here. If I move her back, though, suddenly, you know, she's more limited. She's no longer within 2 of Nayeli. So the Sword Coast formation works really well for Calliope. Calliope is great in it because of this ability. It's hard to, as long as you're putting her in this 3rd column, she's gonna heal or protect everyone. Shield. Her healing is shielding. In this game, they equate those as the same, even though they're not. So what is a column? We kind of talked about that. All of these are columns. So this is the front column. Generally, it can either be called the front or the tanking column, because this is where your tanks go, folks. It seems super obvious, and yet it isn't always. Second column, third column. This is the 4th column back here, and this is the 5th column back here. Different formations are going to have different numbers of columns, and each column can have different numbers of slots. We've seen that. We saw that when we were looking around. We're going to get more into specifically some of those different formations in a bit. What does adjacent mean? This one gets used a lot as well. So this terminology from Celeste just says next to her. Some of them at times may use different terminology, but basically when we're talking about next to, we're talking about adjacencies. In this location, Celeste is adjacent to all of these slots that are around her, right? So she gets 6 adjacencies. A lot of the buffers in the games, a lot of them, especially the more powerful ones, want to be adjacent to your champion. So it is good to know which support champions want to be next to things and which don't. So that's a good term to know. Obviously, if you're way over here, not going to be adjacent. Pretty straightforward. You basically have to be butted right up against the other champion. So you're either going to be at the top or bottom in the same column, or you're going to be kind of catty corner, up or down, front or back, right? Which brings us to, in terms of terminology that they use in some cases, what is front, what is rear, what is top, what is bottom. There are buffs that you'll get from blessings and sometimes from champions that reference either being in the front of a formation, at the top, at the bottom, or at the rear of a formation. This is going to depend on the formation layout. So, as we see here, Nayeli, the tank column, is going to be the front, right? This is the front. However, it's kind of simultaneously also top and bottom, because there aren't any other slots in her column. Whereas Bruenor is the top, Jarlaxle is the bottom. If we place Ashara all the way here, we now have someone in the back. So this would be the back column, and that is going to be the back of your formation. You do want to look at those. You want to, if you're looking for that specific buff, if it's from a champion, you can read it to see if it's working correct in incoming effects. So if an effect says it wants someone to be at the front or the back or whatever, and it's coming off a champion, you're going to be able to tell whether or not they're actually receiving it from here. So this can help you figure out what is those places in the formation that I'm looking at right now. What this doesn't do currently, incoming effects, is show you what blessings you're receiving, or it does show for perks, like we get best and brightest, but we don't necessarily get everything. Like we get hold the line from a certain blessing, but if we had one that we'll have to look in certain places. We'll hop over here to Tomb of Annihilation that may be updated now. God, wouldn't that be nice? Hold on. Now I'm going to go look. Tomb of Annihilation is the one where we're going to see a marked requirement. They want you to have certain blessings are going to give you more damage for being in certain places. Right away we get, where is it? Up here. Increase the damage of champions in the rearmost column of the formation by 100%. So we're just going to drop back here. We're going to look in our incoming effects. Oh, and I didn't look at the name. Bad Garwar. Bad. Fallback. I know that. Come on. So we're going to look for fallback. Are we getting it? Yes, we are. So there we go. Incoming from Kelembor's favorite blessings. Now, even though I don't have anyone else in my formation, I'm still not in the rear. Even though I'm in the rear of the champions that I've placed, that doesn't matter. The game wants that specificness. You don't see fallback here anymore. This place specifically have two blessings. Fallback and then edge of your seat is if you're on the edge of a formation, which is the next question. What is the edge of a formation? So here, everywhere around here is an edge. All but one slot in Tomb of Annihilation is an edge. This is the only place that will not get the edge of your seat bonus, right? So, and you can see that just by moving them around. See, now we've got edge of your seat again. So these are good ways to tell what is an edge, what is the front, what is the back, what's the top, what's the bottom. The top one is called top shelf. So if we move up here, did we get it? Yes, we did. Hey, top shelf. Did we get it in the front? Yes, we do. So this is what it's telling you, that even the front, even all on its own, it is top, front, and bottom all at the same time. So they can be multiple things, folks. And then the one that gets asked, because sometimes certain blessings refer to things like a hole in your formation. Well, what's a hole? It isn't just a place where you haven't placed a champion. We're going to go to Descent into Avernus here. Because it's the funny one. Wouldn't let me click on that one for some reason. Come on, load in. Alright, I'm going to throw out... die, buddy. We throw out a bunch of champions here because we want to demonstrate. We want you to visually see what's going on. If you'll note, we have fleshed out our entire formation, but there is this gap in the middle here. As you note from the layout, boom, there is this... There are 6 champions around a hole in your formation. This is relevant specifically in this campaign because there is a blessing that you receive. Where is it? Huddled for Warmth. Increases the damage of champions adjacent to the hole in the descent formation by 50%. So this is what they're referring to. They're giving you... These 6 champions are receiving Huddled for Warmth. Because this is the hole in the formation. So that's what you want to look for a hole. That's how you determine, well, what's a hole they're referencing. So if you ever run into that, this is the major call out for this is in this term. But this is a good demonstration and actually a place where we can look at how some things interact. If we bump Calliope up here and we look at where her buff is being applied, this is important to know. When you have a hole in your formation, or a gap, or if there's something that's making it so there's a big where adjacency means going around, then this changes how some buffs get applied. So if you'll note, Calliope's arrows do not count this hole to get a shield over to Minsc. So remember, if we think back, Song of Protection gives temporary hit points to champions within 2 slots of Calliope. Well, you can't count across a hole in a formation when you're counting those 2 slots, because when they make that count, they're counting adjacencies. So Calliope can get Celeste, Calliope can get Jarlaxle, and we see the arrows. There's one going to Bruenor, Ashara, and Nayeli. But that's where it stops, because this is 1-2. Right? It's not going to get up. We can't do the 3. We can move it here, and then we can even hit some tanks. But we're still, we can't jump across this gap, even though this feels like it's 2 to get here. There are some champions that can buff across gaps. We will have to look at one real quick. Hold on. Oh, it is in the same slot. So Darius. Darius extends a buff out. Increases the damage of champions within 2 slots distance of Darius. This is important. Terminology is important. And call CNE out on anything. Anytime they're not using the correct terminology, give them feedback. Because this is how we understand how Darius works. It does not say next to, within 2 slots, like Calliope said, if we hop back over. Within 2 slots of Calliope, just generically within 2 slots. That's referring to adjacency. But within 2 slots distance means it's measuring that distance, and it doesn't need adjacence. So, if you see the arrow here, it is going all the way up to Bruenor now. Because it is jumping that hole, and it'll come across to Minsc. No matter where we place this, it's going to jump across that hole because it's measuring its buff based on distance and not based off adjacence. Now, this can also come up with other champions. Some champions like K'thriss. They want to buff specific referenced locations. If we look at... where is it? Here we go. Unseen Encouragement. Increases the damage of the champions furthest from K'thriss. Well, how are you going to measure that out, right? Again, you're counting adjacencies. So we have, 1, we can get 2 away here, we can get 2 away here, that's 2, that's 2, but Darius and Delina in this location are 3 away. So placing K'thriss here is going to buff into both of those positions. If we look at moving him, you can see how it changes. So this is just going to be Delina. This will just be Tyrell. This will be all of our tank line. Right? You can kind of move this around. This goes to the back. And this, right here would be specifically in the back. So you can get an idea with these arrows of where that buff is going to be applied once you've unlocked the buff. But it's important to know that placement even before you get there, because you're building your formation around these upcoming abilities. So if I want to put my DPS right down here, then I know that if I want K'thriss to be buffing that furthest champion, then that's where they need to be. Now, it's important to note, if I don't have anyone in these slots, where's K'thriss's buff going? Well, it's not going anywhere, because there's no one in those slots. It's not counting what's the furthest champion currently away from him. It's counting what is the furthest slot specifically. That's how it's placing the buff. So even though it says increase the damage of champions furthest from K'thriss, what it's actually doing is buffing the furthest slot from K'thriss. That's important to remember when you're looking at that, because we can put him down here and we can buff. It says he's buffing himself. It reads it as there's a champion there, but it would then just be buffing Tyrell, right? And here it's not buffing anyone. So keep that in mind. You can't just leave someone out to try to move a buff to a different place. It's gonna buff specifically that furthest slot, right? Now, once you've built out a formation that you like, I do not like this one. We're gonna go somewhere else. In fact, we're gonna Do I have enough tokens? I don't think I have enough tokens on this account to hop into an event. Nope, I do not. Okay, so let's just go back, and we will hop back into our favorite Sword Coast. Once you have a formation built out that you enjoy, and you think, okay, I want to use this one. I want to try this one out for a while. You can save your formation right down here on the left. This little it's supposed to be a floppy disk. If any of you remember what those are, it is the save button. You click on it. It's going to allow you to save whatever your formation is. You can name your formation, and you can assign it to a kind of hotspot, which is a quick swap slot. You get 3 of them. They're the numbers that are down here, 1, 2, and 3, but they're also bound to keys on your keyboard. 1 is Q, 2 is W, 3 is E if you're on PC. So you can quickly swap in just by hitting a button. So I obviously already have a lot of formations in here. Some are named, some are not. So this is just a generic one. This is a generic one. I don't even remember what these are for. So I'm actually going to... Oh, I know what that one's... Oh, no, I don't know what that one's for. I'm just going to delete it. You can override it by loading over... Oh, hold on. Raspy voice doesn't work. You can override it by clicking this. It's going to overwrite whatever this is with whatever you currently have out. Right now, I have nothing out. So technically, that's going to become a blank formation. And now I'm just going to delete it because no one wants a blank formation. So once you have them saved, you can reference them all in a folder here. Just the save manager. You can do things like load in that one, save it. You can assign a formation to a save slot. You can save up to 50 formations in every campaign or event or patron patron campaign. There's an amazing amount. They updated this within the last year, I believe. And it was just an amazing quality of life upgrade for everyone, because now you don't have to worry about just saving a couple of your favorite formations. Now you can save all the stuff that you've tried. So whenever you're saving, do please try to, I'm horrible about it, but try to give it a name that's specific so you can reference it. I have a speed farm one. I have a Torgar farming one now that he's in. Luck of Yandal, I think this was for unlocking his achievement, like Freely's achievement. That was the one that I put in there, and I just saved it in case anyone wanted to know what that is. And then you can load it again, either by hitting the hotkey or pressing one of these numbers. I have familiars that are saved too with it. It saves the place that you put the champions. It saves anywhere you've put familiars. You still have to pick, if you're doing this manually like I did, you're still going to have to pick your specializations. However, this interacts with Modron automation up here, in that if I had set this up here with this formation, after I save it, I can then access all of them here, choose which one's going to reset. If I enable this, when it resets, it's going to auto-select the specializations. If I saved my formation after I chose the specializations, it'll note it automatically, or I can come down here and click the specialization button and manually select it, and then it's going to automatically load everything for me no matter what. Again, it requires on also having familiars to buy and level up your champions, but this will then take care of the rest. So that's another good feature of the formation system, and why you want to make sure you're saving specific formations you're building. Not just because when you're going to be doing Sword Coast for a long time, folks. There's a lot of the Sword Coast to explore. All of these places that it's going, and then it goes into Barovia. We've got locations over here, and then you go into the Underdark, which is where we're exploring right now. So there's only just the one location, but man, there's a lot going on here, right? Who knows how far we're going to get in the Underdark. So save those formations so that you can quickly load them in. Even if you don't have familiars, you're still placing it here. Let me pop that in. This is Torgar farming. Oh, this one does have its familiars in. Dang it. I'll have to do it a different demonstration. We'll go demonstrate on a different account, I guess. If you don't have formations to buy your champions, it will still save the layout And as you buy that champion, it's going to put them in the position that you had placed them in that formation. If you add someone that wasn't previously in that save formation, it's just going to dump them into a generic slot. But you can still get use out of the save formation system, even if you don't have familiars auto-buying champions, because you're going to get that layout that you've saved automatically loaded in as you buy each of your champions. So you don't have to remember, oh, where did I have so-and-so? Where did I have this person? Where did I have that person? Super important. Hey, we're doing good on time. Another big thing you want to keep in mind, so this is kind of tips and tricks. Saving formations is the big one. I am real bad about it. I'm getting better. I didn't save formations a lot back when we only had a couple save formations because, I don't know, it was just, for whatever reason, I got so used to, after a couple years of manually building out my formation every time I started, that was just what I was used to. Now, I am getting myself back into the habit of building a formation and clicking save every time, and then naming them. That's also a pet peeve of mine. I haven't named them all, specifically because of the ability now to do Modron automation. It's just a good habit to get yourself into. So the other tip and trick, though, is, and I can't stress this one enough, go to the Discord, discord.gg/idlechampions, or !Discord in chat to get a link. It'll take you directly there. Register, sign up, join the Discord, hit up the #formations channel. The people there are super great about helping you out with a formation. There's links to lots of tools and websites that help you to capture an image of all the available champions that you have, which is, as I hope you understand now, is important to knowing how to maximize a formation, is to know which champions you have in which slot that you can use to combine to build out your optimal formation. But also there's, you can build out formations and save those and share those as well. So make sure you hit that up. And if you just want to ask on Reddit, people are totally helpful in Reddit. Again, if you're going to ask questions on Reddit, if you're like, hey, can you help me out with this formation? Like in my event post right now that's up. If you're having troubles with formations and building a formation for the current High Harvesttide event, you can ask for help in there, and either myself or someone else that's reading the post will provide feedback. Just make sure you include a list of what event champions and evergreen champions you have. We all understand that everyone's going to have the core champions like Brunor, so just include what other champions you have in these slots, so that we know how to suggest, roughly, again, just as a starting point, a formation that you can try to use. Keep in mind, to truly accurately give you the best possible formation advice, you would also need to know all of your blessings, all of your perks, all of your items and their item levels, and don't give all of that. We'll give you a starting point, and then it's up to you to alter and adjust based off the conversation we've had today, where you're going to place those champions. So we're going to touch on a couple different things, because a lot of the advice I've given today, and a lot of what we talked about, is about maximizing, ultimately, your progression, your power, by placing, tanks in the front, focusing all of your buffs on a DPS, providing support for your tanks, right? Like if you need to give them survivability. This is kind of the core, right? All buffs should point to your DPS. Your tanks should be supported in some way so they stay alive, unless they support themselves. Some do. Some tanks like Briv and Ayla can give themselves support. Briv heals himself based off the damage he's taken, so he can kind of just stand up there on his own and take care of himself in most cases. And Ayla can shield herself based off enemies that she has spread one of her abilities to on the screen. So again, she takes care of herself. But other tanks may need Calliope nearby, or they may need Celeste either behind them or within 2 rows, depending on which specialization you choose, right? Like, they're going to need some support to keep them alive when the enemies are beating on their front door. And I need to turn progress on. However, there are scenarios where you're going to need to build formations out where damage and progression isn't necessarily a primary goal. We're looking at one right now. This formation specifically has nothing to do with the damage of champions. 0. This formation is moving ahead based off the familiars that are on the field and the damage it's getting down here from click damage. The champions are just there for show, for the most part, but they're providing buffs and assistance to my familiars in the sense that we have a bunch of speed champions here. Now, speed is not a tag that shows up in a role. However, it is an unofficial role for champions. Speed champions have abilities that make them do things, if we find it down here, that speed up your progress. So when Deacon has fewer than 6 stacks of Story of Doom, the speed of enemies spawning is increased by 200%. This means that the speed of them coming from the side of the screen to this point where they're instantly dying is super sped up, and that's important to your speed because the faster a wave dies, the faster a new wave spawns. So Deacon is in here giving us speed in that way. Shandy speeds up the game like a speed potion with this little arrow you see. Sentry reduces the requirements of a level, so as we see, from 25 down to a minimum or a maximum of 17, depending on her item levels. And Melf does a variety of things. Melf he can do what Deacon does. He can give you double credit for kills. Here we go, speedy supplement, and it can increase quest drops, increase enemy spawn speed, and he can make more enemies spawn. He has a chance to make more enemies spawn every time a new wave comes out. So these champions, this formation is built out specifically for speed. That's it. Havilar's at the front. She doesn't need to be at the front. She's a tank. I just threw her there anyway because I'm always in the habit of putting my tank at the front. But she doesn't need to be there. She also increases like your quest drops and kill credit against fiends, specifically with Mott and Dembo. She has a Fiendish Resolve ability that does that. Now, the other champions are out here are not speed champions. Oh, I just screwed up my formation. That's fine. Farida, Binwin, Hitch, and Birdsong are all out because they're they're either fast attackers, multi-attackers, or both. Because specifically in Mad Wizard, there are times when you will hit an enemy that is a barricade, so an inanimate object that has a bunch of hit points. It doesn't need a certain amount of damage. Familiars can't click through it very quickly. They only click on barricades once every 6 seconds. So all of these fast attackers are in this formation to delete those as fast as possible so I can continue moving forward, killing as instantly as possible, and earning myself as many gems as possible in a given time period, and then resetting. This is what people refer to as a gem farming formation. Everything about it is built out to move quickly through Mad Wizard specifically. We're on Cursed Farmer, so this isn't the right level for it, but it is built out specifically to move super fast, have enemies spawn super fast, and kill things super fast, either by click damage or through these fast attackers. This is a scenario where their actual damage buffs and support buffs don't matter at all. For instance, I get people asking me why Melf is in the back because he's not buffing my DPS. Well, the DPS in this formation are my familiars and my click damage, so none of that matters. So there are scenarios where you're building a formation out that kind of throws all the rules out the window. This is one of them. Another is this formation. Now that we have Torgar added to the game, it's probably a good idea to explain this. Let me just click through a bunch of specializations. Okay, now we should be good. So Torgar is a new champion that was just added to the game with High Harvest Tide. He has specific things that he wants from things that happen in a formation, and this is one of the reasons why we want to teach you how to build formations. Because if you just want to help out Torgar has markings of a zealot ability. So whenever he or an adjacent champion or any evil champion, which is something I added with his specialization choice, kills an enemy, Torgar gains a zealot stack. Torgar's damage is increased for each zealot stack he has collected during this adventure, and stacks persist through resets. So that means he keeps those stacks forever. They just keep adding up. This is a ramping damage mechanic for Torgar. So if I'm using Torgar and I'm wanting to earn as many stacks as possible from him, I want to build out a formation where he is getting credit for as many kills as possible. So in this specific formation, again, he himself gets credit for a kill, which is what we learned off the ability, and anyone adjacent to him gets credit. And then I picked his specialization that allows also evil characters to get credit. So that means I don't need to worry about the champions around him being evil. I just need to make sure that the one in the front and the one in the back that aren't adjacent to him are evil. And they are. Artemis is an evil character. Korth is an evil character. So everyone in this formation is giving me kill credit for Torergar. Now, what are the other people in the formation doing? Like, Artemis and Korth exist just to give kill credit. I'm not getting any bonuses from them. I need to hit that again because for whatever reason it isn't loading my familiar. However, Deacon is here for the same reason he was in my speed formation. He's making enemies spawn quicker so I can kill them faster. Shandy's speeding up the entire game so I can kill things faster. Melf is doing any of the three things he does so I can kill things faster, right? Minsc has a minor speed ability in that he can occasionally cause an extra enemy to spawn. Super minor. But in this case, I'm trying to maximize everything I can get, so I throw him in. Now, the two up front here, Birdsong and Ishii, they're there because they are fast multi-attackers. In fact, Ishii is the fastest attacker in the game, guaranteed, because she is always going to attack a quarter second faster than anyone else. So right now she's at 275. That's because Birdsong is at 3 seconds. So Ishii's always going to be your fastest attacker. So I am guaranteed with this formation to be attacking super fast and killing everything instantly because I'm not going to push super deep on this. In fact, if I were to farm this specifically and just do super fast farming, I would look at Melf. His speedy supplement changes every 50 areas, and I would want this specific effect. Whenever a non-boss enemy wave spawns, there's a chance for extra enemies spawning. I would find a place to sit with him like this, and I would just let them farm. I would probably throw speed potions on. Ideally, it would be Mad Wizard and one of the portal stages, specifically because they spawn super fast. But this is going to guarantee to kill things instantly. I'm going to get lots of extra enemies on the screen, and they're always going to clear automatically. And his stacks are just, as we see here, they're just going to go up constantly. And that's how you farm Torergar stacks. But you have to build out a formation specifically around the idea of what does Torergar need? What does Torergar need to do this specific thing that we're trying to do with him? In this case, just build stacks for future use, right? You wouldn't build this type of formation if you were actually trying to use Torergar as a DPS and push deep, because you don't have the things you need. You don't have a tank. You don't have buffers trying to make Torergar do better, right? This is a very niche use scenario, but you need to be able to build those out, right? There's another example. There are a couple examples, but we're going to talk just about one specifically of kind of a very different way of building out a formation. There are a couple champions in the game who are DPS, but they don't necessarily want you to focus buffs on them. They want you to focus buffs on other people. So we're going to take a look at one right now. It's hard to see him at the moment. We'll hop back a couple levels. Archon, one of your core champions. He's all the way over here in slot 12. We're going to level him up some more, because why not? Archon specifically he's a little odd. He is a DPS tank, which is the only DPS tank we have in the game, unless I missed someone, and that's very possible with now 69 champions in the game. Nice. He is a DPS tank, so he can sit in the tank line and tank, but he can also do DPS. If we look, he is who is setting my Bud. Bud is the measurement by which you are judging all the decisions you make when you're building your formation. You don't look up here. You don't look at your base DPS or your average DPS. You look at your Bud. Bud is the truest indicator of the strength of your formation in terms of basically how hard are you hitting things with your DPS, and who is your DPS currently, which sometimes confuses people. In this situation, though, and we're going to get into it, we're building out all of our buffs to focus on everyone but Archon. as best we can based off the champions we're using. But this is going to allow us to get a high bud, as high as possible a bud, base ultimate damage with Archon, and also to push as far as we can, because that's the other measure of how well your formation is doing. How high is your bud, and how far are you pushing? When you get to a place where, like where I was, and it looked like I wasn't killing anything, and it had turned off progress, when you get there, you can start then moving champions around and try to see if you can find a way to adjust them to do even better than before. But with Archon specifically, we want to get down here to his specialization choice, which is what determines how he wants to do things. We've chosen Usurped Power. This is generally considered to be the DPS spec for Archon. He receives all positional formation abilities received by adjacent champions that don't already target him at a higher rate. So this rate is based on a variety of things, including your gear. But basically, all of the buffs that would normally be going to your DPS champion, in this case, they're targeting on Krull, which does probably look a little odd to someone. But again, this is just kind of where my DPS would go, right? Because we're behind Nayeli, in the column with Bruenor, in front of Calliope, and adjacent to Celeste, right? We have chosen this spot where Krull is to be our DPS spot, but Krull is not our DPS because Archon is. All these buffs are going to Krull, and then Archon is usurping them off of Krull and magnifying them. So they're all getting bigger because of how Archon works, excuse me. Because of how Archon works. He is magnifying all of those buffs. So we have directed them all here. There are even better ways we can do this if I want to do this. No, yeah, still like that. Ideally, this is not the greatest formation for it, but it does work. Yeah, we're still going to go back to this one. All right, I still like that formation. This isn't the most ideal Archon formation, in terms of the layout, because Archon wants all of the champions to be either buffers that buff certain positions, like certain places, so that all of them go to that primary DPS slot, so he can usurp all of them. He also wants... doesn't necessarily have to be in the tanking slot, like position. This is just works out here because in High Harvestide, this is for Rita's formation. For High Harvestide. New players don't generally have 3 tanks. Usually you have Nayeli and you have Tyrell, which is Musrel up here at the top, in case people are wondering. The third tank that you're given as a new player is Archon, all the way in slot 12. So when you reach him, you can build out this formation. You just have to understand that suddenly Archon can be your DPS and push you further than your other DPS would. Fortunately, I have some decent gear for him, greens and blue and an epic there. So he is making me able to push further than I would have normally if I had a regular formation going on. But even if I had, say, Jarlaxle here as a DPS, who's an actual DPS instead of Krull, Archon, as you see down here, is still going to be the highest damage dealer with the E55. The primary DPS position is still E51. So this is one of those scenarios where everything you kind of learn, it's kind of considered a more advanced scenario. Everything you have learned about formation building, you're still applying in terms of pushing all those buffs to a specific place. It's just that your primary DPS isn't in that position anymore. Your primary DPS is actually Archon, and he's just adjacent to that person. Artemis works in that same way that we were looking at Artemis on my main account. Artemis observes buffs in that same kind of way. Observes and copies the positional formation abilities applied to other DPS champions in the formation, and gains a copy of those abilities on himself at a higher value. Even if he already receives that effect, which is a little different, right, than Archon. So there are a couple DPS champions who kind of flip formation building a bit on their head and make you want to do things just slightly different. This is why, again, why it's super important that you learn early on to read through champion abilities, especially clicking that show upcoming seeing what's coming next when you first unlock the champion, to see how they're going to want to be placed in your formation and to build them, but also to understand how they're going to interact with everyone in your formation and what needs they might specifically have to truly become optimal. Sometimes you're going to have to make a decision about what's going to be optimal for you, and it may not be optimal for that specific champion. In the case in point, if we come back over here and look at Makos, Makos' Dark Blessing increases the damage of champions not adjacent to him, right? Which is why I'd kind of thought about moving him up here. But this isn't a great formation for him to try to maximize that effect, so we just kind of have to forget that. He's going to buff everyone, and he's going to buff Archon just the same. However, he also has another one. In his Dark Blessing spec, he has Draw Power. Increase the effect of Dark Blessing by 100% if Makos is not on the edge of the formation. Well, to do that, I would need to put Makos right here. And we can do that in this specific scenario, because we can still then place all the buffs onto Krull. But in situations where we were earlier, like in Sword Coast, if we look over there, the only place we could place Makos to give him that buff, like to give that bonus to Dark Blessing, would be where Torgar is. And we already know, in most cases in Sword Coast, our DPS is going to be probably here if you're new. Maybe back here in the third row if you're using a different tank than Nayeli. Which means the DPS would be adjacent to Makos, which means they wouldn't be getting his buff. So you have to understand that in that situation, you're going to ignore one of Makos' features, because you're getting a bigger buff by ignoring it than you would if you tried to just get all of his abilities at once. So make sure you're looking at the big picture and not just focusing super hard on those very specific instances. So I think that's where we're going to stop the first part. We're going to head into the Q&A here in a moment. So if you give me one moment, all those questions, I'm going to pull all those questions up from the doc that Jay has pulled up for me, and we're going to go over all of those, or we're going to go over as many as I can. We're going to try to hit all of the ones that are specific about formation. It looks like we did go a little long, but that's what happens when you start talking about Archon and Artemis. You can go on forever about those two. If you want to learn more about building Archon and Artemis formations specifically and see some much better examples than what I have shown you, head over to the Discord and the #Formations channel. There are people there that love those characters and will show you kind of truly optimized formations for them. But for now, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back with our Q&A. So be right back, everyone. And we're back, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So I'm going to dive into the questions that have been pulled. I'm going to hit the ones that are specifically about formations, formation strategy, or having to do with that as closely as possible. And then we'll see if we have time for the others. Let us see here. So starting right away, Supli, what is better in general for deep pushing, a single tank or a multi-tank formation? I know, like most questions, this might require more details, and it's not a simple answer. Yeah, it's really not a simple answer. Kind of the factors that you're looking at, and this is relevant to events, because whenever we get into an event, people are like, which formation is going to be the one that I can push the furthest in? And this event specifically has a single tank formation, a double tank formation, and a triple tank formation. So which one of these are you going to be able to push deepest in to get the most favor out of? This is why people want to know. It depends. It's like every question in this game. It depends. You need to apply some critical thinking. You need to understand your champion pool and what they can do. Single tank formations are great if you have a super beefy tank that can withstand lots of punishment all on their own, and thus you can focus all of the other positions onto support buffing your primary DPS champion. If you don't have the beefiest tank in the world, Tyrell, at only at high level, it's just a long-running joke. You're actually going to push deeper by putting 2 or 3 champions, if you have them, tanks, up in the front line. Because what happens is, as the enemies start stacking up, basic math here, folks, if you have 25 enemies on the screen and 1 tank, they're all beating on 1 tank, and that tank has to soak that damage. By having a double tank formation, each tank is only dealing with 12 or 13 on average. It just depends on RNG, on where they land. And with a 3 tank formation, they're only dealing with 8 or 9, right? So you can withstand more damage with multi-tank formations if your tanks are still, maybe they're a little under-geared, or maybe you don't have lots of favor yet, so you can't necessarily upgrade them to those health upgrades that they get in their in certain specializations. Like Niali only gets the major health share stuff that she can share with other people in her devotion spec. So you got to keep that in mind. But if you were to run multi-tank lines with multiple tanks as a newer player, you're probably going to get further than if you just had 1 tank. Later on, you may have the gear and the support to just have 1 tank on the front line and thus focus more on damage. So those are kind of what you want to keep in mind. A lot of times, if you have all 3, like as you just saw on my Marzawar challenge account, which is what we were looking at with Archon, I had 3 tanks in the front line, and I was pushing further than I would if otherwise. But that's because I could get enough. I had enough favor that I could get Archon out. I don't have any other tank options. So if I hadn't had enough favor, this would have been rough, because one of those slots would have had to have been filled with a non-tank or left empty. In which case, that non-tank would have fallen over real quick. So keep that in mind, folks. What position does adjacent target? I am never sure. So it's going to depend on what placement, like where you're placing a character, as to where it's targeting. But it's always basically just whoever is around that target. So if we look at Havilar up front here, if the game lets me look at her, adjacent to her are only Birdsong and Hitch, right? Whereas Binwin is adjacent to Sentry, Farida, Birdsong, Hitch, Deacon. Oh wow, why did I not remember that? And Shandy. So depending on your placement, your adjacency is going to be different, right? So Deacon only has 3 adjacencies in this location. Melf only has 2, right? So you have to look at, like, what is the champion doing with their adjacency, and then where can I place them to get them adjacent to whoever they really want to be adjacent to. So if it's a buffer, like as we were looking at with Celeste wants to be adjacent to your primary DPS. Sure, she buffs the damage of everyone that's adjacent to her, but because of the way you're focusing your damage onto one single DPS to truly optimize your formation, you really just need to make sure that she is next to that DPS, and secondarily, that she's also healing your tank line. Generally speaking, you're usually wanting Celeste first and foremost to buff your DPS. Generally speaking, that's first and foremost your choice for everything. And then the secondary support of keeping a tank line alive or keeping the rest of your formation alive is situational and nice. But you're going to run into variants where you want, where you want to focus on survivability instead of damage. But generally speaking, you want to focus on damage. There are times where you want to balance that. Like I was choosing Calliope's shield spec because I know early on that account, survivability is going to be more important to me for my tank than just a little extra damage. Like a double damage. Double damage is nice, but more survivability is nicer at that point. But that's a knowledge thing that you'll learn. Am I able to turn down the background music? Sure. Here we go. Thought I had it pretty low, but okay. Let's see. Underdark, Modron. How do I get those? Underdark is basically just another function of the Sword Coast campaign, so just continue to progress through the Sword Coast campaign and you'll get there. Modron is part of the multi-party Modron automation feature, which is initially you click here. You have to have 2 champions minimum in every slot to unlock those features. I just did last week a Garwa's Guide to Multi-Party Modron, so go check that out on the CNE YouTube channel or in the VOD currently here on Twitch, but those don't last long, so hit up the CNE YouTube channel for more information about those. Do you need to put the tank in the first column? And isn't there technically a more efficient formation with those 4 champions if you move them back? Oh. Well, this was going way back to when I was just demonstrating those first 4 core champions. Do you need to put the tank in the first column? Yes. Starting off, if I was going to a very low level and I wanted to be a little more efficient or whatever until I got further in, I could move the tank back as long as I still keep the general relationship of the positions the same, right? So if let's go. Did I save the 0? No, I did not. Okay. Let's just close. Let me turn off the formation, and I'm going to rebuild this real quick because I want to explain this, because this is kind of where you can get in trouble when you're building a formation, is if you're only thinking about the right now and not about what I'm going to need at my wall, you can run into a lot of trouble. So we're going to throw in Bruenor and Celeste and Niali and Jarlaxle, because this is what we were talking about. So I had them in this type of setup, right? So I had Niali in the front column, and then I had everyone else kind of in their positions in the back here. Now, if I had set this up right, I'm going to go Battlemaster. Based off this, I'm going... well, I won't pick all of this yet, because I want to demonstrate what's going on here. So, I built this out in this location specifically because I'm thinking about where am I going to want them when I've got 20 enemies beating against Niali. And I have to make my decisions about specialization choices in that regard right away. Because if I were to go for like the most optimal formation early on, like just right now, this is the most optimal setup. Why is it the most optimal? Because I can have Niali buffing everyone in this column. I can have Celeste adjacent to everyone. I get Bruenor in the same column with both people. And I can then choose Celeste's War Domain, right? So that means she's increasing all of her power and still healing the front line, right? Now what happens here is then I get into the scenario where as I add more champions... Right, well now, if I get up to here, if I get to the point where I want to add more champions, suddenly I've got a non-tank in my tank column. So that's not going to work out. And even if I wait a little more, I've got a non-tank in my tank column. And it's only until I get all the way up here to Tyrell that I can put a tank in my tank column. But then, I've still got an extra slot up here that isn't being used. And I can't then change, like I could then put Tyrell up here, and I could put someone here. But now, I'm not getting the benefit of Niali's tanking abilities, and I've locked Tyrell into a tank position. And this is suboptimal, because I'm not necessarily getting the best straight out of the box from all of this situation. And if I go to move it around, like, now I'm losing Tyrell's buff for tanks. Well, okay, so if I hadn't chosen Wild Shape, he could be in Moonbeam. buffing, and then he could be back here. Well, now this row isn't getting Nayeli stuff, so now I've got to move these up here. And I don't want Makos adjacent because of his buffs, and I need Calliope up here. Well, this looks good, except now Celeste isn't healing my tank. You know, I can fix all this through potions of specialization, but these are, early on, these are pretty rare loot. I have got a lot, but that's because I don't use them, because I make my decisions right away, and the specialization I'm choosing, in most cases, immediately for what I want when I'm at my wall. So could there have been a more optimal situation where I place those 4 champions on their own? Sure, but I can't think about that when I'm building my formation. I have to think long game. What is going to be the best situation for me with a full formation when I'm all the way at my wall and I'm finally killing things that are difficult to kill? So you want to think about maximizing all of the usage with trade-offs. Again, I gave up a double damage bonus for her buff to get the flexibility to put her back here and still heal my tank. And that's worth it for me. Specifically because I want some survivability on Nayeli. Because I may not have lots of damage yet, and if you're fine with making the trade-off, if you're fine with leaving Celeste not healing Nayeli, that's your decision. Make an informed decision about your formation, is what I'm trying to help you understand. You don't have to do everything I'm doing here, but you know, I would hope that you understand that when I'm making these choices, I'm doing so from a position of knowing how all the champions work, and trying to make the best choice for them at when they're going to be maximum level. So same with Nayeli. Win is a little more HP. Shared is a ton without it. Actually better than doubling your damage. So here's the thing. Nayeli does get a decent amount of base HP. However, one of the things she doesn't get, see, we're in Oath of Devotion. One of the things she doesn't get if you go her damage ramping spec, again, I believe it's a double damage. I'll look at it here in a second. She does not get Aura of Heroism, which increases the health of all champions based on her max health. That may not be something that you care super much about in this setup, in the Sword Coast formation. I care about it because I want max survivability in all cases, but for other reasons, right? I'm factoring in not this formation, but most likely Krull. Krull wants super survivable tanks. But sometimes you just want survivability early on, as much survivability as you can get. So in those cases, I'm going to make that trade-off, because when we look at her specialization, this is just going to increase the damage by 100%, which means you're getting a double damage bonus. Whereas this means that she's getting some extra health bonuses, and potentially a lot. Like if we look in here, now you've gone all the way up to 100. She still hasn't gotten any extra health. Obviously, I have a ton, but that has to do with my items and perks and stuff, right? So if we're looking through here, like, okay, now we get to 130, she gets 90 health. Now when does she get some more health? She doesn't get another until 235, right? Like, so it's going to take a while for her to start ramping up her health. So the sooner you can get, one of the big problems early game for newer players is a lack of survivability on their tank. So the sooner you can get some health on your tank, the better, because that double damage isn't necessarily going to be the biggest deal in the world for you in terms of killing things, because of the way health ramps up on your enemies over time. You'll get further to a certain point, but then you're going to hit a break where suddenly their health is not manageable, and they're stacking up on your tank, and your tank's falling over. And that's where things like making a choice for some survivability is going to matter. Again, make informed decisions. If you'd rather go all damage and be a glass cannon build, fine. Just know that when you hit your area close to your wall, you're gonna fall over real quick, right? And also know that in situations like High Harvest Tide, when you're fighting against certain bosses, like the Champion of the Veil or the Hero of the Veil, they can have abilities that attack more than just your tank. And everyone else on your team's super squishy. So if your tank isn't sharing health with the rest of your team, even though your tank is alive after they cleave your front line, that cleave wipes out multiple other people in your party, and now you don't have the damage to beat the boss, right? Whereas if you had done that health share, if you'd gone that tanky health spec, to share as much health as possible with your team would be alive and be able to push forward. So there's a lot that goes into it, but you have to keep that into account whenever you're building your formation. Let's see. Build a formation for Sword Course, just the basic champions, please. Curious how that would look. Best in slot champions? That's different from... So first you said with the basic champions and then best in slot. So those are two different things. And best in slot is really going to be dependent on gear, so I'm not going to go into that. But this would be a basic Sword Coast formation with your first champions. I was using Delana here because Hitch is technically an evergreen that you unlock. So I didn't put Delana in, and I put in buffers. This would be kind of your generic starter Sword Coast formation. And I'll explain why, right? You've got Nayeli doing the tanky thing up front. You've got Bruenor buffing right behind on your DPS. Jarlaxle would be the primary DPS. Celeste is buffing Jarlaxle and also healing Nayeli. Calliope is buffing Jarlaxle and also shielding Nayeli when we get somewhere where something starts beating on her. Makos is buffing all non-adjacent. Minsc would be providing favored enemy. He's not really the greatest support, but in that regard, he does provide a favored enemy bonus against certain enemies and some generic champion damage bonuses as well. Ideally, this would be a good place to look for swapping somebody out and putting somebody else in. So, for instance, you pick up Hitch from the newsletter, and then you put Hitch in here because Hitch actually buffs Jarlaxle. So that would be an ideal choice for swapping someone out, right? Ashara would be set to elves and dwarves in this scenario, right? If we just do all this up. Hitch would be charismatic. Makos would be Dark Blessing. Tyril's already on Moonbeam. So Tyril's in the back doing Moonbeam, which basically buffs everyone else in the party. But Tyril has things like he wants as few people as possible to be adjacent to him for his Moonbeam buff. However, he also has a heal, Druidic Healing, which only heals champions adjacent to him. So Tyril's real odd. He's like, no, stay away, and I'll help you. No, get over here, and I'll help you. Like, he's one of these kind of opposite effect champions. It's really odd. So you wouldn't necessarily want to put Tyril up here, like, healing your tank. It just doesn't really work. In this formation specifically. There are formations where you could pull that off, but in this formation specifically, this is kind of a generally acceptable Sword Coast formation for a beginner. As you can start swapping other people in and out, and as you pick up more blessings, eventually this third column is where you want your DPS because of blessings, which means you need a different tank other than Nayeli, and things start to change, right? If you can get that far and you can swap Nayeli out, then Tyril could become your tank in wild shape, and you could put your DPS here, but then you need somebody other than Nayeli, so you need a swap for like Grama or Spurt or Omen. Artemis, if you're using Artemis as your DPS, right? Things change as you add new champions to your roster, and you should always look to see what those champions do to see how they're going to fit into your formation. Still got about a half an hour left, folks. I'm getting through these as quick as I can. Your Toragor farming guide was very helpful. Whenever it's convenient to get into, could you explain a good formation for farming other upgradable hero stacks, specifically Zorbu and Black Viper? So Zorbu and Black Viper are super easy. They don't require that formation-specific build like Toragor does. Zorbu literally just wants to sit on a level with something he hates and kill them infinitely. That's it. He can sit on one level that's spawning lots of enemies, just killing them over and over and over and over again. and basically you're just buffing him like you would any other formation. Nothing changes. Zorbu is your DPS, and you're putting all the power into him and killing all the things. What changes is that you want to specifically find an adventure that has a level that spawns that type of enemy, hopefully quickly, and then just kill infinite amounts of them to stack up. That's it. That's it. He doesn't need a specific formation. Black Viper, similar. Black Viper doesn't even need to be killing things. Black Viper just needs to be in your formation every time you kill a boss. So and you've chosen her gem spec. Like if we go over here, where is she? Black Viper specifically wants Collector. Increase the drop chance for red gems by 30% and increase the damage, current adventure damage. I don't really care about this. This matters if you're using her for a DPS, but she doesn't even need to be a DPS to collect. She just needs, she wants that specialization to help out with Jewel Thief. So adds a chance that a red gem will be dropped from a boss loot sack. Each red gem collected grants a damage bonus, but also stacks across all adventures. And she has thresholds that she gets to. She just needs to be in your party. She can be your DPS if you want her to be, and she can help you progress and do that and churn through. But she could just go in a Mad Wizard formation, gem farming formation, and also farm gems alongside everyone else. So like with this formation that I had earlier, the speed farm, I could swap Black Viper in for any of those multi-attack DPS champions I had put in there. I wouldn't want to remove a speed champion, but I could take out any of those DPS champions. And put Black Viper in, and she would just happily collect gems her red gems as I collected green gems. So nothing about a formation really needs to change for them. Let me see, what are my specializations for gem farming? So specifically, if we hop over, you know what, hold on, let me save this. Oh, wow, I can capitalize, folks. New player formation. If we hop over here, Havilar's spec doesn't matter. Birdsong spec doesn't matter. Hitch, none of these matter. Melf will want extra supplements because this is the speedy supplement. Deacon boss wants speed. Sentry wants Echo's Will. These are all their speed effects. Shandy wants Ranger Trading. Again, this is speed effect. Binwin wants more minions because his extra attacks fire with everyone 2 slots away. So basically he gets a lot of extra attacks. It's just the potential is there to do lots of attacks. That's what we want for him. Havilar doesn't matter. I pick Mastery Battle just as a habit. Birdsongs doesn't matter. Because again, we're not worrying about her buffs and how they apply. Hitch, I go more daggers because again, I just want the potential for extra hits when I'm on those levels where there's lots of hits. That's it. I mean, in general, you basically want to choose the things for a speed farming formation that are going to make things go faster. And in some cases, those champions don't have anything that makes them go faster. So. I suppose if you're building an evil formation, but using Zorbu, tank duty would fall to Lazaps. If you wanted to specifically have as many evil people as possible, minus Zorbu, who, I mean, is arguably evil because he's a racist old man. Gnome, excuse me. But he's not. He's actually not evil for some reason. If you wanted to do that, yeah, you could put Lazaps in the front if you were trying to get as many evil people as possible. But if you wanted to build out an all-evil formation, you probably wouldn't be using Zorbu. Is kind of my point there. Which is better for Melf? Additional enemies or spawn speed? I mean, he's going to rotate through on his own every 50 levels. However, if you're specifically referring to Torragar farming or Zorbu farming, if you want extra enemies spawning, because the idea is to kill as many things as possible. So. I'm new on the game and I don't really know how to position heroes. Some tips. I think I just did an hour on that. The general tip is open up the hero and read specifically these these upgrade levels that have a name. So in case Benwin, extra attacks, extra damage, crash and smash, right? And when you get to their specialization, read it. And if you don't understand what it's buffing, just close it. Like if let me get to someone here. So if I don't understand if I'm looking at this and I'm going, I don't know what any of this means. Like, what's a chromatic orb? What is skill empowerment? Just close it. Close it. Open up the champion and find those things. Skill empowerment. What the hell is a chromatic orb, right? Oh, I have to come over here. Dydius tosses a chromatic orb, right? Like, you have to find the information in their character sheet here. Read it, and then go back. Like, if we scroll down here, we can then look. Empowered empowerment increases the skill effect of skill empowerment by 200%, plus 50% for each stack of practice make perfect. This is basically his super buffing one. Oh, I get that now. Okay, empowered orbs. This means his chromatic orbs now do AoE damage. Okay, and it increases his damage. Okay, this is what I want if I'm using him as a DPS. You have to just kind of read through. That's the tip. Read through the champions. Try to understand exactly what this is doing and how that affects the formation, and then make your decisions based off that. That's really probably the #1 tip in building a formation, because that's literally what building the core foundation of building a formation is, understanding every champion. There are a lot of champions, folks. 69. Nice. But you don't have to learn them all right away. You know, you start off with 12. As you add new ones, kind of try to learn how they fit into your formation. Some of the more recent champions, I haven't learned everything about. Torrigo's brand new. I know how some of his stuff works. I don't know how well he's going to do in a high-end formation. I haven't tried him at my wall yet. I know how to build out a farming formation for him, but how do I build out the best possible formation for him to be a DPS? Or how is he going to fit into my current formations as a support? These are things that I still am learning, as much experience as I have in the game. I learn all of that stuff just by using them. Yep. Care to talk about formation thoughts on getting Farida's or Puent's specific Harvesttide achievements? Let's go look. In general, achievements for building out, like the achievements that have to do with a champion tend to just revolve around using them. But sometimes they require specific formations, or maybe a specific formation can help you to achieve them quicker. So let us see. Farida's kill 10,000 enemies with Hellish Rebuke. Okay, so this is a solid one. Farida is right here. Farida is, for those who don't know, twin sisters with Havilar. So this is gonna work out well. Farida's Hellish Rebuke. Enemies that hit Farida or champions adjacent to Farida take damage equal to a percentage, like a multiplier, on top of Farida's DPS. This is actually how Farida kills things at your wall. It's Hellish Rebuke. It's not her attacks. It's Hellish Rebuke. So if I wanted to adjust this formation specifically, I would either want to put Farida up here, right behind and adjacent to Havilar, so that Hellish Rebuke would trigger on Havilar whenever something hit Havilar. Or I would choose a different formation, or a different specialization for her. Because Farida has one specialization that just boosts her own power, again, just double damage. And the other makes Hellish Rebuke extend within 2 slots of Farida. So by choosing Dark One's Luck, I can keep Farida in this 3rd column in Sword Coast, which gives her this extra... where is it? No, I'm losing it. She gets the extra damage for being in this column. And why can I not remember where it's from? Anyway, you want her in the 3rd column in general, because you usually want your tank, eventually you're going to get to the point where if you have a tank that can buff back into this column, this is generally where you're putting it. So I could put it here, and I could put her right here. If we were in a position where we were being attacked as a party by something, like the whole party is getting hit, You can put Farida in the middle and have that extension of 2 for her Hellish Rebuke, and thus everyone, whenever anyone in the party would get hit, they would all be triggering Hellish Rebuke, which is amazing. It absolutely deletes hit-based enemies that do that. Like, there's certain things I want to think. Let's see, we've got the... there's like a tree that does it. But I think there you have armor. Some are hit-based, some are armor. But as long as she's got the damage to take off armor, she can just delete those segmented bosses when they're hitting the entire party. But this could extend all the way up to the front. But the thing is you just have to build a formation where you're getting Hellish Rebuke on your tank or multiple tanks. And then sit on a level where the enemies are strong enough that she's not killing them with her basic attacks. And instead, they're running into the tank and dying against the Hellish Rebuke off the tank. So you've got to find that level and then turn off your auto progress, and then let it farm up those 10,000 kills, or just use her a lot because you're always going to pick up those kills on every run, right? Point is specific. Point wants you to max out. I don't even need to look because I already know. He wants you to max out the number of people that have his bleed going on, and then you kill them. And yeah, Dwarven Splat. Max out Point's Count 'em Off ability for 6 consecutive seconds. So if we look up Point... Yes, here we go. I should probably level him up, right? Oh, there's Count 'em Off. Whenever an enemy damaged by Twint is killed, the damage of all champions is increased by 20%. Every 12 seconds, the stack total is reduced by 25 seconds. So basically, we want to get to his max, which I want to say is like 25? Does it specifically say here? Just max it out. Okay. I believe it's 25 stacks. This doesn't necessarily matter, but if you want to go for this and make sure, you actually want Bloodstained Armor. If you're trying to do it passively, just so that it potentially has a chance to pop up while using him, you would go Bloodstained Armor. Neither of those things actually matter, though. Did we get to his ultimate yet? His ultimate, we'll choose it, but his ultimate is what matters. Oh, he's not in the formation. That's why his ultimate's not showing up. I'm good at this game, folks. Okay, there we go. His ultimate is Round 'em Up. Point dashes quickly around the area, rounding up all available enemies, then stuns, damages, and inflicts a bleed effect on them. So this is actually how you get his achievement. Where he is in your formation doesn't matter. I mean, it matters just in terms of using him effectively, right? But it doesn't really matter. We want to round up as many enemies as possible, apply that bleed, and then kill them right away. So the best thing to do with this is to build out your formation, get to a place where your DPS champion can easily kill everything on the screen, or where an ultimate can easily kill, like some ultimates can easily kill everything. And then what you do is you pull out your DPS champion. We're going to pretend it's Birdsong. You have to count and pay attention, utilizing either your best ability to count or by opening up your tank slot and looking at the ramping damage. You need to build up 25 or more enemies on your tank. Then hit his ult, which will round them all up and apply that bleed to all of them. Then put your DPS back in the formation and wipe all those enemies out, right? That's basically going to max out his stacks. And because that lasts for 12 seconds, there is time enough in that to allow you to get that 6-second max. That's how you do Point. That's how you do his achievement. So it is a bit about formation building, but it's more about formation management in the sense that you have to, build out a formation that can survive long enough without killing anything. Again, by pulling out your DPS usually. That's the best way to do it. Get to 25 or more, go to 30 just in case. Then pop his ult, then drop your DPS champion back in and wipe everything out, right? You have to build a formation that can do that. But that's how you do it. Is there a website that gathers some popular common formation setups? There are some websites. If you hit up Discord and you go into the formations channel, there are websites that people use to help build their formations. I don't know. I don't use them necessarily because I use my knowledge. But you can check in there. The #formation channel would be able to answer that question for you and talk to you about the websites that are out there and what they're going to do. Is this where we point out he's been on the wrong screen for 30 minutes? I'm not. Yeah, this is a joke from yesterday. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Does Archon's usurp power work with Ashar's bond? So this is more of a champion-specific question, but it matters when you're building out an Archon formation. No. He can't. Archon can only take things that he qualifies for, and he'll only take things that don't already apply to him. So buffs like Ashar's bond, which apply to everyone in the formation that they qualify for, can't be usurped. So usually with Archon, again, that was a kind of starter Archon formation because that's a starter account. That's my new Marzuar challenge account. That is kind of a starter's formation for Archon. But what he really wants are champions that specifically buff onto specific places, either to specific slots or to specific columns that he's not in, and then he's adjacent to that and can steal it all away and magnify it. So the question about a follow-up to the question about putting tanks maybe in a back slot is about players who with low favor trying to complete objectives without the ability to fill out a full formation. You're never going to be in a situation, well, I shouldn't say never, but in Sword Coast, you're not going to be in a situation where you're only going to ever have 4 champions out. So it doesn't necessarily apply. You're going to get, even on your first run, you're going to get enough champions out where you probably want to go ahead and set it up as if you're going to get super far. Sword Coast, you're probably going to get early on at least half your formation fleshed out, and learning the best practices up front. Again, this is about informed decision making. Learning the best practices lets you then make a decision about, hey, do I want to avoid that practice in this specific use case scenario, right? Until you know how to and are comfortable with building a formation, the idea of building a formation that might only be useful for a certain number of levels isn't as important as learning the best way to build out a formation and making those informed decisions from the start, right? Once you have that ability, you do whatever you want. I've built formations that don't have tanks in the front line. I specifically completed Strahd's Soriel's Resolve, which is arguably one of the hardest, most challenging variants, like in boss fights specifically, not just variant, but hardest boss fights in the game, with all my tanks in the back. But that was an informed decision I could make, right? So, yeah, learn each champion and then apply that information to make informed decisions about how you build your formations. Always. At that point, then you can learn to break the rules, and I want you to. I want you to experiment with crazy stuff, because that's how we get things like Azaka farming, or crazy breaking crawl stuff, right? Like playing with things in ways that maybe they weren't intended to be used is great, but just, figure out if it's beneficial to you and then go from there. Let me see if we've got any more specifically about formations, because we're about to run out of time, folks. Thank you for hanging out with us this week. Remember, in terms, just quick reminders, upcoming shows, there's obviously no C&E shows on Sundays. Currently, there's none on Mondays, but apparently there's some coming soon. Tuesday morning, I do idle chatter about Idle Champions on my channel, twitch.tv/Garwar, for about an hour. We start at noon Pacific. And then we go raid the C&E channel because they have Bardic Inspiration, where they make songs about champions. Last week's was Toragar, and it was great. I think this week's is about Black Viper. I want to say this week's is about Black Viper, and the person who played Black Viper in Dice Camera Action, Vivid Vidka, I believe, is showing up. But things may change. I know that got bumped once already. It may get bumped again. And then Wednesday mornings, Evergreen Champions. So if you're newer and you want to learn more about building formations or just how to play the game, that's a great place. They start off really early. And then Wednesday afternoon is Mars's Guiding Hand, and he like me, is just a player in the community who does shows, who tries to help people out. So he can be helpful. He and his tea, which he's always drinking, can be helpful to guiding you into making good, informed decisions about the game if you want to join him on Wednesdays. Thursday mornings, I do the Marzawar Challenge, which is that new account I was on over there. You can find more information about that on Reddit, but I stream that for about 3 hours in the mornings and answer questions about the game there too if people have them. I start at 10 a.m. And again, we then raid the C&E channel because Thursday afternoons is the dev stream, dev Q&A with Dylan. And then Fridays, Griddle Champions in the mornings and Garwar's Guide to Everything in the afternoons. And again, then Saturday, I think I know what next week's topic is, but we will announce that later. But we're still going through a lot of the basic systems. So if you're a newer player and you like this type of format for learning things, be sure to join us next week as well. So let me see. What's a good DPS replacement for Jarlaxle? Early on, Hitch is a good option. He does not have a DPS tag. He has a support tag, but he actually does a decent amount of DPS, and he may be a good option for you to swap into early. If you're just talking core champions, core and evergreen. Jamila is another swap. That's actually what I swapped into from Jarlaxle because I got 2 epic items on Jamila, and that's important. Always keep in mind, gear can be a determining factor on who becomes your next best buffer or support or tank. So you may get real lucky with gear. We got 2 epic damage buffs for her last week, or this last Thursday when I opened up chests, and that instantly made her my highest DPS champion. Right, so look at who you have gear for. It may be that you've got Farida and Torgar as DPS options from this event. If you get real lucky on their gear, that may actually replace Jarlaxle for you early on. Is the best way to farm stacks for Torgar a Mad Wizard? I like it. I think there's probably still some debate because Torgar's brand new. But I like it because it's very AFKable, sitting on a level with a portal, dumping enemies out like that. That's my... like I said, I get around, with my items, and thus my bonuses, I get around 50,000 kills an hour, which is a lot. Let's see. With Torgar farming, I'm fighting the familiars are killing monsters. Yeah. Don't put familiars on the field for Torgar farming. Yeah, that's why if we look at my Torgar farm, I'll just hot swap into it. No familiars, folks. None whatsoever. Oh boy, here come all the specialization choices. No familiars on the field. Don't need them. Don't want them. I want all the kills to be coming from all the champions, because Torgar's only going to get credit. Again, this is if you read his ability, he only gets credit for champion kills. So yeah, you got to keep that in mind when building your formation. When building and saving a formation, you have to keep in mind that familiars are part of that save formation, and are kind of part of your formation when you're building it out here. If they're out on the field, they're going to be clicking, and they're going to be doing the damages, and that's not good for Torgar or anyone that wants to farm kills. Let me see. Any other formation questions I might have missed? Gar's Melf in the back of his speed formation. Doesn't Melf have to be in the front or back? Not be in the front or back line for a speed thing to work? No. That's if we hop back over. That's a specific requirement of his Melf's adaptive support spell. Effect range changes if he's in the front or back column. But he's not here to buff. He's not here to buff. He's just here to speed. I think Melf's speed buff is useless in this position. No, folks. Again, read your buffs. Melf's adaptive support spell is what is affected by front and rearmost columns. Speedy supplement has nothing like that. Melf provides a random speed buff, up buff. The buff provides changes every 50th area and draws from these 3 possibilities. So there is no formational requirement for a speed buff. Always read through the abilities. It is a little confusing because some of his abilities have similar names, but make sure you're reading them to make sure you're doing exactly what they need. I think we may be able to do some real quick. How do percentages work? I understand that some are additive and some are multiplicative. When you see a character gaining 100% of power or health, what is the base? The base is whatever it is currently, right? So if it says for that specialization for Frida, gives her a 100% bonus, well, that specialization sits outside of the parentheses on the math, if you want to think of it that way, and says X 100%, right? Or X2, which is what 100% equals. And all of the other math on the inside happens and changes based off where you're going and what's happened and how high or up you are. That is a multiplier on whatever other else has happened already. That works whether it's health or whether it's power or anything. So whenever they add in something like that with a specialization choice, you have to keep that in mind. If it's just in your upgrade list, then again, it's that upgrade boosts damage like 200%. Well, that's a 3 times multiplier against everything that has happened before it with all of the other factors. So it all works in together. And that's where we're going to stop, folks. We have come to the end of our show today. Thank you for joining me. I hope you found it useful. I know we didn't get to all the questions. That seems to be a running theme lately, because lots of people have lots of questions. But I'm glad you're here and that you asked them. If you have more questions, again, hit up the Discord. People are super happy. If you're a newer player, there is a new player channel in the Discord. We can ask questions in, or otherwise just ask in the tavern. People are hanging out in there always and are available to answer questions. So you can ask on the Reddit if you want to hit that up as well. I had someone tweet at me the other day with a question. That works too, at Garwar down there. Or you can hang out on my channel when I'm streaming Idle Champions and ask questions, or you can hit up any of the shows with any of the other people this week. Remember, this is usually focused specifically on Saturdays. We're focusing on a certain topic. Garwar's Guide to Formation Strategy. Next week will be different. Lots of the general questions. Garwar's Guide to Everything on Friday afternoons at 1 p.m. Pacific is kind of whatever topic you want, and I try to hit all the questions. Last couple of shows, we've had so many people in chat, which has been amazing, that I haven't made it through all the questions, but I generally hit over there 80 to 90% lately, the last couple shows. It used to be 100. Kills my anxiety. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me today, everyone, and I will see you all next week. Bye.